Something I've noticed recently, especially a few years now into this generation, but technically going back to 2017, consoles are going the wrong way. And I'm not necessarily talking about just in terms of their abilities, the raw processing power, their convenience with something like the Switch and how it's this portable console. No, I'm actually talking about the pricing for these systems and how we've actually broken away from what's been pretty much a consistent trend for the entirety of gaming history, just about. And that has to do with how that pricing trends throughout a generation. Because, believe it or not, we're actually going back to a price point that I didn't think I'd see, really ever again, based on how much damage it did to Sony. And, well, we're going to go over that here today. So if you guys enjoy this video, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe if you're new. So it was mostly a kind of a fun video that I had thought up for a Sunday. And it's just something I've kind of observed for years now, but really it started to, I guess, pique my interest a bit more after Sony took the all-digital PS5 and raised it in price when they introduced the new model. Now, they haven't called it a slim PS5. Most of us just call it that just to differentiate it. Technically, it's just a new PS5. But remember, that went from $400 to $450 for that revision for the digital version. Now, the disc-based one stayed the same price at $500, but no doubt the price went up. Now, Microsoft is doing something kind of interesting here, as they did introduce recently the Xbox Series X Galaxy Black 2 terabyte SSD system. Actually, I think it looks pretty cool. It's got like the green stars, almost like you're looking at a night sky, just obviously green tinted to match the Xbox theme. And then even the controller looks kind of cool. It has sort of that same thing on the D-pad here, the green undertone right there. I think the console looks good. The only thing about this is when you go through the press release, it does come with the price tag of $599.99. Where have we seen that before? Well, back in 2006 at E3, remember Sony famously put that pricing up on screen next to their PlayStation 3 console. Now, that was back in 2006, and well, things have obviously changed quite a bit when it comes to the value of money, just how much it's worth, right, with inflation. But still, we've kept this trend where pretty much consoles in general have stayed away from the $600 price point and even kind of the $500 price point for a while. If you remember, the PS4 launched at $400, the Xbox One launched at $500 with the Kinect camera, and then they dropped the camera and had a $400 version of it because that was kind of the sweet spot at that time in 2013. But then we had the PS5 and the Xbox Series release at $500, and they both had offerings that were a bit cheaper. The digital PS5 at that time at $400, and the Xbox Series S coming in at $300. All right, so there were cheaper options, with one, both of them missing their disk drive, and one just being less capable in terms of its overall visual output, 1080p versus 4K, right, that sort of thing. But the thing that's really caught my attention is we don't really get any price drops on consoles anymore, like official ones. You'll see consoles go on sale frequently, for whether it's for like holiday sales or Black Friday or Cyber Monday or Memorial Day, whatever, right? There's usually a reason for a store or a chain of stores to put these systems on sale to get traffic in the door. But if you look back, this is kind of interesting. I didn't realize this existed, but this is an entire like page all about price cuts that have happened throughout the generations. This is over on VG Sales, and they basically track it even down to the month and the year and the region for when systems saw price cuts. And from what you can tell going through this, after about 3 years, which the Wii U barely counts because that was, well, it wasn't around for very long to even get many price cuts. But if you look through it, most of the time you'll see 3 years into a console's generation, it will see some sort of, we'll say, significant price cut. Like the PS4, they introduced the PS4 Slim, and they went down in price. They went from $400 to $300, and a lot of that was to make room for the PS4 Pro that showed up in 2016. But still, we got cheaper in general. Or if you stuck with 400, you just got a better running system. Like the PS4 Pro was just way better than the base PS4. Obviously, it did 4K, and you get super sampling, better frame rates in some games. But that is what we've been used to forever, really, is just dropping prices. Same with the Xbox One that also saw price cuts. We remember got the Xbox One S that also was a bit more capable in terms of what it could do. It could put out HDR. It was a big thing. Ultra 4K, Blu-ray playback. And then with the Xbox 360, we saw a bunch of price drops. In 2008, we were down to $200 for an Xbox Arcade. And that was, 3 years after the system released. So we were $100 down from there. They eventually got the slim model, and they were playing around with pricing, as you can see, quite a bit in all these different regions. But the one that's always stuck out to me that really signaled a turnaround for it was the PlayStation 3. Because after a few years, remember, again, they famously launched the PS3 at $600. That was a 60 gigabyte model. They did have the 20 gig model, but it didn't have Wi-Fi, and they discontinued that pretty quickly. You can see in April 2007, discontinued it, got it out of there. The 60 gig went to 500. They did the 80 gig. They went up to 600. But really, it was when they introduced the PlayStation 3 Slim 120 gig in 2009, and they got the thing down to $300. That's when they were kind of off to the races. They had a bunch of their first-party games start to come out and push hardware, and that's one of the reasons they had a pretty big turnaround from giant enemy crabs and dropping a PSP on stage and then flashing the $600 pricing to pretty much within margin of error, matching or even exceeding the Xbox 360 when it was all said and done in that generation. And then if you go back to, I mean, you can look at the Wii, sure, the Wii got pretty cheap, but the PS2, that got down to $100 in 2009. Yeah, that was like 8 years or so, a little more than 8 years after the PS2 came out, but they got it down pretty far in terms of pricing. And even then, 2002, they got it down to $200. Xbox original, same deal, got the 150. That was only around for 4 years, so that had a pretty significant price cut pretty quick. It was 50% less. The GameCube also got itself down to $100, but really I gotta show. We just talked about GameCube. Gotta show the Dreamcast. Those things were going for $50 2 years after it came out. That is absolutely wild. If there's something you wish you go back in time and pick up, if it's not Pokemon cards, can you imagine walking in, just picking up 10 Dreamcast systems for the price of an Xbox Series right now at $500 or a PlayStation 5 at $500? Absolutely wild stuff there. PS1, same deal. Basically, we've always had these price drops throughout the generation, but things are different now. Even the Switch, I never saw a price drop. It's still the same. The Redbox Switch got better because they changed out the processor and shrank its fabrication, so it didn't eat as much power, right? Which means, okay, there you go. It has better battery. It was mostly for security purposes. Like they wanted to change out that stock X1 and add some different measures to keep people from hacking it with a paperclip. I get it. It makes sense. But we have the same price for the Switch. They technically went up by adding the OLED to $350. And while they did have the Switch Lite, they introduced an entire different model to drop the price. So it kind of seems now that we are just not going to have these price drops throughout generations going forward. Maybe this is just one of those weird things because, of course, we had the pandemic that took place that raised just raw material costs behind the scenes, but it hasn't really affected much. Xbox is still kind of tough to use as a comparison because Microsoft's doing all kinds of stuff when it comes to their console not necessarily being the focus. Nintendo has sold over 140 million systems and did not have to do a price drop. Sony has been rolling along at $500 for their flagship model, we'll say, with the disk drive. And something tells me, based on the fact that Microsoft has a 2 terabyte Xbox Series X at $600, guess how much the PS5 Pro is probably going to be? That's right. Sony's going back to the $600 price point, and I think they're going to be more successful here in terms of just audience reception because we're kind of just used to these higher price points now. And it's interesting. We'd go through the generation expecting price drops, expecting revisions to also get us there because technology behind the scenes would improve and eventually pay dividends across the board for the manufacturer, the platform holder, to be able to produce cheaper systems and get more people in the door and us just save money on it. Has not happened. And I kind of wonder if even even though we could see just raw materials go back to, or at least stabilize in terms of pricing, even drop down, maybe go back to a more normalized price point. I mean, it seems like the model's working now. So if you're Sony, Microsoft, or Nintendo, especially Nintendo at this point, you just probably maybe you just raise prices as you go through, like you kind of did here with newer models that use different features like an OLED screen. Maybe that is the path forward. We go the opposite direction. We raise prices as we go through the generation. So something that just kind of caught my eye and I've been observing for a while, and I wanted to bring up here and see what you guys think about all this down below. Are you a bit surprised the way that this generation has sort of transpired when it comes to pricing? Or is it something you really haven't noticed much and maybe you didn't experience any of these sizable discounts just a few years into a generation previously? Thanks, guys, for watching, and I'll see you next time.